with a dynamic player like Luka, just how many different threats other than him does this Mavericks team pose?
Well, I think it's kind of interwound because of the type of player he is. He forces you to game plan to the extent that you're forced to give things up, and then it's a question of just how well you can execute to make those things harder. Whether it's staying down on shot fakes, not fouling, having a hand up, when he contests, not letting him get to his spots, being ready to help, but not over helping. There's so many things. So if you try to commit to him, he's going to find people. If you try to guard him, in a more traditional kind of one-on-one sense, he's capable of taking the smaller player into the post, stepping out against the bigger player. So there's all kinds of things. Anytime a player can score on the post, score in pick and roll, and score in isolation, that's a lot of options that you have to consider and try to contend with, and then it requires more than one guy. That's really what it comes down to.
Trey is available to play tonight. When did he clear concussion protocol, and just will he be on any type of minutes restriction?
He will be on a minutes restriction. Whether it was yesterday that he went through the final portion of that. Last night or this morning, there's like a stamp that has to go on at the very end, but he went through the majority of the physical tests, and then the doctors have to see him. So I don't know exactly when that happened, but the decision, coming to him, and he feels like he's ready to go. But yeah, we'll he's not in harm's way in any way, but that's pretty standard that the guy's been out for a couple games with concussion. Easing back in, so to speak. He won't like that.
When even though the results may not have been what you wanted the last two games, what positives did you take from the last two games that you feel that you can implement and carry into tonight's game?
Those were really unique games. We played a Sacramento team that had lost 5 in a row and had 4 days of practice prior to our game. And we couldn't make a shot in the first half. I think we shot 24% from the field in the first half, but we hung in there and competed and got back in the game. So I think that perseverance throughout a game like that is something that we have to feel and know and be able to replicate. And then the Golden State game is hard to describe, but they eventually went on a run in the second half, and that was the result. But that game kind of stands alone in some respects. And, I think Bogey and Igor, and all of us, but those two guys in particular, processing that beyond basketball.
Quinn, with Trey on minutes restriction and having to go deeper into your bench because of injuries, what additional conversations have you maybe had with guys like Patty Mills and Garrison and Trent to just maybe push that expectation when they take the court and bring some extra juice?
Well, I think they've brought the extra juice. That's been one of the things. There's a reality to that. As far as our size, our matchups defensively, some of the things that we need to do, and those guys I think have played at a high level. It's hard for Patty to guard Wiggins around the rim, so there's some of that. But the next possession, he's diving on the floor for a loose ball and knocking down a three. I think Trent defending, those guys all just need to play to their strengths, which is, Garrison's shooting close to 50% from three, and he has a tough night the other night. So it's not as much, asking more of them. It's more minutes is what it is, and it's them, staying within character and playing to their strengths and competing. And that's the biggest thing in my mind. Those three guys have just competed when called upon, whether it happens to be this stretch with more guys that have been out, against some matchups that are tough. But they've given us that consistently every time they've been called upon, and that's a credit to to who they are in their preparation mentally.
How is DeAndre Hunter progressing, and how have you missed him in this time that he's been out?
It's kind of obvious, to be honest. When you look at, he's 6'8", Jalen's 6'9", Sadiq 6'7", and when you're down one of those guys, that suddenly, those two guys are starting at 3 and 4, and we're coming off the bench. So size is what I'm trying to say. That's the obvious part of it. Additionally, I think it's required, some guys that have not played to become rotational, and that's where we've seen Trent and Patty and Garrison come in and really compete. We've played Onyeka and Clint together more. That's been, I wouldn't call it an adjustment, but something we've done to be able to, defend at a higher level. They really have more size, so that's something that those guys are trying to make work. And DeAndre's been our best on-ball defender. Matchups like tonight, there's usually a few of those matchups in the NBA, but it's also given both Sadiq and Jalen an opportunity to take those matchups, whether it's guarding a guy like Blancaro or situationally tonight with Luka. But we'll get DeAndre back here shortly, and your hope is it's the same thing that happened with Jalen. Where when he was out, you felt that in a different way, and then with Hunt out, and he's shooting 40% from 3 and finishing, and 90% from the line. And, we're not the same team without him. And he knows that. He's trying to get back, and you don't really. To me, I'm answering the question, but at the same time, that's something that you don't feel sorry for yourself and lament. Those are things that happen throughout the season. But it'll help us when we get him back. The same way it helped us when we got Jalen back, and it'll help us getting Trey back.
Maybe you answered it already, then with DeAndre's return coming hopefully shortly. But with the two-way minimum game of guys being able to be active coming up for Trent at 44, just how much more does that kind of force you to be creative with who's coming off the bench?
That's something that although you have, you're aware of myself, Landry, the performance staff is integrated into that to the extent that it's a response to some guys being out. But it's also very difficult to predict because it's a more complex situation. But suffice to say, it's something that we're aware of and monitoring, and we'll adjust to the extent that we need to as we go further.